So, welcome everyone. My name is Kristen McMahon, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of the Robert H. Jackson Center in Jamestown, New York. We envision a world where the universal principles of justice, fairness, and equality prevail. And we're so excited to kick off this program series commemorating the 80th anniversary of the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg. A few housekeeping notes before we get into the meat of this. Automated captions are enabled, so if you need those, please turn on that feature to enhance your experience. There will be a question and answer portion at the end of our conversation, but you do not need to wait until then to ask your questions. Please put those in the Q&A section as you think of them, and if they are pertinent at the time, we will ask them in real time. On November 20th, 1945, the justice mechanism at Nuremberg began. This was a grand experiment led by the United States, the United Kingdom, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and the Republic of France, and supported by 19 additional countries. These trials established the critical principle that individuals, regardless of political position or military rank, can and should be held accountable for crimes. And those crimes were defined as war crimes, crimes against peace, and crimes against humanity, plus conspiracy to commit any of those three crimes. In the 80 years since these trials, our world has grown more complex. New forms of crime, such as cyber warfare, gender-based, and eco or environmental attacks, have emerged, and our justice systems have needed to adapt. Revisiting Nuremberg now provides an opportunity to delve into the history, examine evolving challenges and opportunities, and understand the enduring lessons of the trials. With our friends and colleagues at a dozen organizations around the world, and most especially with you, during the next year, we will explore the history of the trials, justice and accountability then and now, philosophy and ethics, propaganda, how a trial like the International Military Tribunal might function today, and much more, and from a variety of perspectives. This gives us an important historical lens through which we can analyze the gaps in the original trials and assess how far international law has come and how it may still need to evolve. Revisiting these issues is essential for a more effective and equitable global justice system. And commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Nuremberg trials is not only an opportunity to reflect on the past, but also to renew our collective commitment to global justice and human rights. We encourage you to tune in for each monthly conversation, and Elizabeth has put that schedule in the chat, and participate and ask your questions. Today specifically is the 80th anniversary of the date the United States Chief of Counsel, Robert H. Jackson, delivered his opening statement at the IMT. That opening statement was more than 3 hours long and set the stage for the next nearly 9 months of prosecution and defense. As Jackson said, what makes this inquest significant is that these prisoners represent sinister influences that will lurk in the world long after their bodies have returned to dust. We will show them to be living symbols of racial hatreds, of terrorism and violence, and of the arrogance and cruelty of power. They are symbols of fierce nationalism and of militarism, of intrigue and war-making, which have embroiled Europe generation after generation, crushing its manhood, destroying its home, and impoverishing its life. Civilization can afford no compromise with the social forces, which would gain renewed strength if we deal ambiguously or indecisively with the men in whom those forces now precariously survive. Jackson knew the world was skeptical and had questions about this tribunal, and his audience was much broader than those physically present in Courtroom 600 in the Palace of Justice. So his goal was broader than just a preview of the upcoming months of the trial testimony and evidence. His goal was to explain why these trials were necessary, how they would be open to public scrutiny through the press and through the recordings, the evidence likely to come out, and the processes for the trial itself. That was important groundwork to be laid from the podium in Courtroom 600. And that's why we're excited to begin this series by taking you to the Palace of Justice and historic Courtroom 600 through our friends at the Memorium Nurenberger Prozesse, or the Memorium Nuremberg trials, with Axel Fischer, the Memorium's research associate. I was able to make a trip to Nuremberg in 2021 and experience the courtroom in its present state. And I'm looking forward to stepping back in time and also re-experiencing the contemporary with you, Axel. And I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your kind invitation. It's, of course, a big honor for us. And yeah, and we are very happy to be present and to be in the position to open the series of events. We already opened ours yesterday at the day at which the IMT trial was actually opened 80 years ago. Today we celebrate you can say we celebrate a wonderful speech, maybe one of the most interesting and important speeches that were ever held in a trial. And I think I don't have to mention the relevancy, the importance of Nuremberg for the development of international criminal law. Most scholars in the field of international criminal law, practitioners, historians agree. But what makes us so joyful and optimistic is that also the public very positively responded to this 80th anniversary. Courtroom 600 yesterday was packed. We had 200 visitors on the occasion of that event. We were doing quite an interesting event. It was so-called history slam, like a little bit like a poetry slam. 5 persons coming from different professions approached the topic of this historic event, and from their perspectives, a theater maker, a creator of online games, historian, a law professor. They all explained their different perspectives, and yeah, it was a very, very interesting evening, and also the response from the politics showed us that the interest in this event is still alive, and we were very, very happy that this 80th anniversary gave us the opportunity to open our house. We will have a days of the open door through this weekend, and we expect a lot of visitors. Maybe to say that we have by now 160,000 visitors each year, and I think this very strikingly underlines the importance of this place. I suggest that we enter Courtroom 600. This is the place where you hope to be, and I hope that the technique functions. Okay, here we are. So this is Courtroom 600, as you would see it today when you enter the Memorium Nuremberg trials, when you come up to the 3rd floor and look into this courtroom. As you can see, this courtroom looks quite different than you are than the courtroom you are familiar with from the historic film and photo footage. And this is why this courtroom, this is because this courtroom has a history that is longer than these 4.5 years during which it was used for the Nuremberg trials. Like the rest of the Palace of Justice in Nuremberg, this courtroom was opened in 1916, and that means it served as a courtroom for a very, very short time during the last years of the German monarchy. After that period, it was used during the Weimar Republic, the first democracy in Germany, that then 1933 was destroyed by the taking over by the National Socialist regime. Then it served as a courtroom under this regime till 1945, when it was finally discovered by the US delegation in summer 1945 and turned into the room for the International Military Tribunal that catapulted this place into the top places of world history. The reason why it looks so different today is that it was returned by the US military administration in the 1960s to the Bavarian judiciary. And from that time on, from 1960 on, it was used as a jury courtroom for an ordinary German jury court. And for that purpose, the very complicated technique that I will explain a little bit later was thrown out. The original layout was restored, and this situation was created. And for a very specialized observer, the different time layers in this courtroom are obvious. Here you can see the wooden panels, the marble doors, the bronze cartouches here, the wooden ceiling. This is from the original. This is the original decoration from 1916. The furniture that you can see was built in the 1960s. Also, these chandeliers at the ceiling, and the only thing that remains at the use for the Nuremberg trials are these siren-like let-outs of the ventilation system that was installed by the US military, because the courtroom, of course, was very cramped. There were something like 400, 500 persons sometimes in this room. The windows were permanently closed, and there was so many electricity in this room for the lights and for the translation system that this also caused a lot of heat. So you had to cool that room down, and these outlets are the only remains that you can see today of the use for the IMT trials and the subsequent trials till 1949. We are now standing right in the middle of that courtroom, and I can make a 180-degree turn so that you have a little impression of this courtroom as it looks today. Now we're looking directly to the south, out of the 4 windows that also very significantly mark this courtroom when you stand in front of the building. In front of these both windows, actually, there was, during the trials, the judges' bench situated, but we will see that later. And we will finish our 100-degree turn and end with the visitors area here. Today, this is a much smaller area than during the Nuremberg trials, when this complete rear wall was broken out, and a gallery and a balcony was introduced to allow to install another 400 additional, not 400, 380 additional places to this courtroom. We will finish now our 360-degree turn, presenting this very richly decorated door that you might have seen in the historic film and photo footage. The defense dog here, and again the side and the view where we started. So this is what you see when you come in today, and we have created this panorama in 2020 to allow visitors from all over the world to come to our place, although it was closed due to the corona pandemic. And as you can see, there are all around little dots in this panorama. These dots are called hotspots. And if you activate one of these hotspots, which you can do later on your own, I hope that the link to this panorama will be in the chat. You can explore the courtroom on your own, but nevertheless, I will take you on a tour through, let's say 4 or 5 selected of these selected places, hotspots that I have chosen in order to give you a very exemplary insight in that courtroom and how it was used for the International Military Tribunal 80 years ago. We will start with this door to the hallway, not because it allows us a look back into time, but just to show you that this these hotspots consist of different ways to approach. This is a very high definition photography of this doorway, and I've chosen it to demonstrate you that you can also observe very, very closely the details of this courtroom. Another hotspot that I want to show to you is this interpreter's booth, because it shows a little bit the variety of these hotspots. And it also allows me to start with a group of actors in this trial that most people are not so familiar with, and that most people do not really have in their mind when thinking of the most relevant actors here in this trial. But actually, without this group, without the interpreters and translators, this whole trial could not have taken place in the way it did. Nuremberg is not only the cradle or the birthplace of international criminal law, but it is also the birthplace of simultaneous interpreting. And the very simple idea behind that was, when they were thinking about ways to conduct this trial, it was quite apparent that a consecutive translation, a consecutive interpreting would have doubled the time for the sessions. So they came back to an idea that already was there, simultaneous interpreting, but never practiced before. So the first thing before they could start with the trial was actually to train people to translate, to simultaneous interpret. And it turned out that people who were used to consecutively interpret were not suitable, because they were too long thinking about the meticulous or the correct translation, and so it turned out they were too slow. So they were looking for another group of people who could serve as simultaneous interpreters, and most of the people used then in this for this purpose were German or Austrian immigrants, German or Austrian Jews who immigrated in the 1930s and found a home in Great Britain, in France, in the Soviet Union, or in the United States, and learned a second language, and often returned to their homelands with the US Army, with the British Army, with the French Army, or with the Soviet Army. And in this course also already had served as translators, for example, in examination of prisoners of war. And they came to this place, and they were trained in a very hard routine to serve as simultaneous interpreters. And not enough, this very stressing and job where you have to really have a good physicist. Often these people said, in this a booth here that you can see that served as the interpreter's booth, just very, very close to the defendants. And it was often the case that the people in this interpreter's booth had families, friends, also Jews in Eastern Europe or in Germany or in Austria, whose fate was determined by these people, by people who were involved in the prosecution of the European Jews. And this was a very, you can imagine, a psychologically very stressing situation for these interpreters here in this booth. And you can see that there are some glass windows that only very, very poorly protected them from the very noisy atmosphere in the courtroom. Yes, this is a group that is often forgotten, but I want to emphasize the importance of this group, because it was this group that made accessible these thousands and thousands of sites of documents that were confiscated and that they translated into English, into French, and into Russian. For making this procedure possible, for making this translation and interpreting process possible, you needed to introduce a lot of technique. And I already mentioned that when the US military took over this courtroom in 1945, in summer 1945, they were first confronted with a very, very big challenge, with the challenge of creating a courtroom that would be able to get along with all the needs for a trial that should be conducted in four languages. A trial that should be photo recorded, that should be film recorded, where you could do radio reporting from, and a courtroom that also would have enough space for the representatives of the world press. So this courtroom was severely changed. And when you go right in the middle of the courtroom, you find this very strange hotspot name, the courtroom. What's behind that? This is the layout of courtroom 600 when the US delegation in summer 1945 found it. And you can see here a courtroom, a very ordinary courtroom for a jury court trial, here with the places for the judges, the places for the jury, the place for the defendants, and the place for the audience. When confronted of preparing a room for this gigantic trial that had so many challenges concerning space, concerning technical equipment, and of course also concerning the impression that it would make. From the US documents that I have seen, a very important aspect also was to create, with the photos and the film that would be produced in that courtroom, a very sober impression. Yeah, and you must imagine that this courtroom was very richly decorated as a typical German courtroom in that time. So what they started with, they threw out all the furniture and then completely renewed that room. We have here a document from the architect who was responsible for the changes that were made. And I will try to, yeah, I think this is better. This view is better. As you can see, the whole courtroom as it was created between summer 45 and November 45. But I already mentioned the rear wall that was broken out. You can see here we had additional space for the press that was situated on the ground, and on top of that there came a balcony also covering this space here for the visitors. You can see here camera booths that were introduced into that room, or by breaking through the walls, only separated with plexiglass windows from the courtroom. The idea behind that was to film, or to enable the filming with 16mm cameras. But as you know, 16mm film cameras are like tuck, 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 tuck. They make a lot of noise, and so they were protected by these plexiglass windows, because it was the wish of the court not to be disturbed by photograph and film works. As you can see, where formerly the judge's bench was, now there was the witness stand and a place to show evidences. The defense dock remained at the same place, and the judge's bench was turned 19 degrees around, and now was situated in front of these two windows. What enabled this? This enabled, and this is at least my interpretation, an opposition of the defendants and their judges, the court and the accused. And on the other side, it allowed to present the mean of evidence, might it be the witness or photographs that I will show you later, visual aids or films, here at this point, at the opposition to the press and the visitors. So you could say the evidence was in the middle of the trial, presented to the public. So, and you can see here on this picture two officers from the US military who were responsible for the rebuilding, and you can see them, they are joyful like little children playing with a dollhouse. And this is a model of Courtroom 600, and this model was used, and this is this very strikingly shows you how highly equipped that courtroom must have been. That model was used to educate the different players, the different actors in the various professions within this trial, how they could get along with their job in this courtroom. And because for every of these profession, there were different gadgets built in this courtroom. The translators used a very complicated amplification and distribution equipment. The judges had their microphones, but also needed a certain communication with the electricians and the interpreters to have the control over the trial. And then the prosecutors had another rostrum where they could deliver their speeches or present their evidences. The defense counsels also, and also the visitors had to be introduced into the technique of following the trial, of how to choose the language when using a headphone. So a very nice aspect, and as I think, a wonderful picture that also shows of how tricky and how inventory and how original they were at the time when they were preparing the trial. This is a point that I've chosen in order to give you an impression of how the courtroom looked like when full of prosecutors, the defense counsel, and of course the defendants, the judges. And I will explain a little bit of how the courtroom was used because this photo is very very suitable for that. You can see here again at the left rear corner the section for the interpreters. You can see that it consists of 12 places, because there were 3 translators for each language. Yeah, you had one translator, French into German, another English into German, another Russian into German, and this went also for the other languages. So 12 interpreters at the time, and another 12 interpreters behind that door. There is a floor, and over that floor there was a back office. They called it the back office, where another 12 interpreters would follow the session in order to be able to substitute one if he would fall out. This is the place of the defendants. Behind them, the military police. In front of the defendants, you can see the defense councils. You see that there were a lot of defense councils. Each of the defendant was represented by one council, and you can see they needed a little space for all the paperwork. Here was the so-called rostrum, where either the prosecution or the defense had the opportunity to examine witnesses or present evidences. In this case, you see a prosecutor, a lot of paperwork here on the table, a prosecutor presenting a visual chart that should demonstrate the court the position of Ernst Kaltenbrunner, who was, among others, responsible for the concentration camp system, and what position he had within the Nazi hierarchy, within the administration of the police and the secret police in Nazi Germany. Here you can see a lot of clerks and stenotypists who were responsible for the creation of the record of each session. And here is the table of the judges, 4 judges, 1 for each nation, and a deputy judge. And here in front of that photo, you can see the the tables of the prosecution. This is the British prosecution. This is the US prosecution. Here you can see the Soviet, and what you cannot see is here an additional table for the French prosecution. When we now turn back, I have chosen another hotspot, and this is the hotspot camera booth 1, and I did not only choose it because it shows the relevancy of the film aspect of this trial, but it also gives you an impression of how much efforts there were done in order to bring this ordinary, normal courtroom into the condition that was needed for the conduct of the International Military Tribunal. What you can see here very nicely is the balcony for the visitors. During the IMT trial, this was not so much the ordinary public, but military observation delegations, people from the various military administrations that were responsible for the occupation in Germany. You have to imagine that there were, of course, also other delegations present in Nuremberg that represented Poland, the Netherlands, Czechoslovakia, and so on. And they also should have the opportunity to follow the one or the other session. And when they did it in most of the cases balcony. Beside this balcony, there is this cabin here that would use not for filming but for projecting films. You might know or you might have read that during the Nuremberg trial, for the first time, they were taking or using films as evidences, really meticulously cutted and edited films, like Nazi concentration camp and the Nazi plan. These are both films that the US delegation presented, but also the Soviet delegation and the French delegation presented films as evidences here in Nuremberg. This was done from this booth, and below, but there is another photo that better shows this booth. Here you can see it when the courtroom was completely established and ready for the action. You can see here a booth that was used as a camera place as well. What you can see very good here is the lighting that was used for enabling them to film with these 16mm cameras. And what you also can see here is an additional booth for taking photos. So the media aspect is a very, very important aspect. And as already in the introduction, it was said, it was not only the aim to disseminate the results of the trial, but also to try to create a positive attitude towards this completely new instrument in international relationships, to create, to establish the idea of international criminal law. And so the film aspect, the press aspect was so important. And yeah, you can see that there were so many efforts to realize the possibility to guarantee the dissemination of this event through all media channels and through all media that were there at the time. When I'm coming back here, I will also show you that this Courtroom also provided the possibility of live radio reporting from this courtroom. Here, when you look through this window, I think you can see it. You can see the visitor gallery in the background. So you have a little bit of an impression of the working place of a radio reporter in this courtroom. So now we have completed our second 360-degree turn, and I can see that it is exactly 6:40 according to my time, which is 12:40 your time. And I think I can go give back to Christian.
Thank you so much, Axel, for that tour. It was interesting to see the juxtaposition between today and historically, and just realizing how much change, how much work they had to do initially to prepare the courtroom, and then how much has changed now. We do have some questions. And so
do you think that I should stop stop sharing my screen, or should
Sure,
I?
Well, sure, that works.
Shall I stop it?
Go for it.
Okay. then.
Perfect. So one of the questions that we have, so you mentioned how loud it was for the interpreters in there. And so I guess one of the questions is how loud was it in terms of them being able to focus, since that can be distracting, especially if you're trying to do some of that deep work.
Okay, you have to imagine that there are some, let's say 70 prosecutors constantly discussing, and you mean some of them whispering and some of them not so very successfully whispering. Maybe a witness who is testifying, and at the same time in the translation booth, in the interpreting booth, someone translating it, and then another person, maybe Göring, talking to Hess, you know, and all this sums up. Yeah, it must have been very, very loud. And if you I mean, the audio recordings of the trial are covering the complete trial, all of the sessions, and you can I think, I don't know if they are online, but you have a constant summing in the background, like from you know, a gigantic bee core. It was really loud, and I mean the concentration that you needed as an interpreter in this situation, I guess, is yeah. I mean today you can see them; they are completely protected from any kind of noise. Yeah,
Yep.
and what is additionally the fact is that the interpreters only get bits of the trial. Yeah, only this very bit that they need to translate.
Yep.
You know, and I mean, and often they don't get the question, but they only get the answer. So you can imagine that this is a very stressing and a very yeah, it needs a lot of concentration. And
I can imagine. I can also imagine it was pretty hot in the courtroom with
yes,
all the lights and everything as well. Yes. All right. A question that we have about sort of historic preservation, and someone curious as to why would the historic courtroom restructured into its present form?
yeah, this is a question that we ask ourselves. Okay, I mean, when in 1960, I mean, the courtroom was used till 1949 for a similar purpose as for the International Military Tribunal for the 12 subsequent trials. You also needed translation technique, interpreting technique, but not so much because there were only two languages, German and English. The press attention was not so strong as during the International Military Tribunal, but a little press was there, and so on. So it could be used. And then later, the international, the U.S. military administration used it for another court. That was the court of restitution appeals. That was a court that was dealing on a civil law basis of people who had material losses during the Nazi regime could address to that court. Billy Joe, for example, his grandfather comes from nearby Nuremberg, and he was betrayed by a local tradesman, and he wanted to get his money back that he lost during the Nazi regime. So,
interesting.
And after that purpose, the U.S. delegation said, the U.S. military administration, who still had this palace of justice, we have no use for that courtroom any longer. So Bavarian judiciary, here it is back. There is a lot of completely unnecessary technical equipment in it that you cannot use, and that is 20 years old.
Sure.
Really, really dated technique at that time. And when you come to a German court, it is the same like in an American court or in a Russian court or in a court wherever on this planet. You try to make a good impression. You want a decent room. Yeah. And so the decision was taken, okay, throw this stuff out. We will restore the original layout. We will restore a little bit the original look of the courtroom, because you have to imagine all that was white. Yeah. During the International Military Tribunal, where these cabins were the windows, yeah, for the cabins. This was all completely richly decorated with paintings coming from the field of, justice, yeah, extremely richly decorated. They restored that a little bit, and the pity for us is everything was thrown away.
Yeah. Oh, that is unfortunate. Am I correct in remembering that it was still an active courtroom until 2020?
Yes.
Yeah. So it continued on in the life of the judicial system in Bavaria until quite recently, actually. Yep.
Yeah, the only thing that survived is two pieces of the defense dock.
Wow. Wow.
And they are in our exhibition.
We have a question about the symbolism of some of the sculptures decorating the main door. Why Medusa, and who else is represented?
We have the first crime in history, which is Adam and Eve, of course. This is normal. Beside Adam and Eve, there are two guys, one with a sword and one with sticks. And they represent the Roman, the Latin law, and the German law, or the Germanic law.
Okay.
As in Germany at that time, they were thinking, okay, our law is a mixture of Roman law and Germanic law. Then we have the Ten Commandments. Yeah, I don't have to. I don't have to comment this. And then we have a sand, an hourglass with wings. And we don't have a real explanation for that. I think that it should serve kind of a reminder for the judges that were responsible for very severe crimes, that they should judge, with a certain caution, because also the time of the defendant is limited. Yeah, not just say, okay, lifelong, but yeah, try to be modest. And and the Medusa is, of course, a symbol for a person that has already been punished.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So, yeah, it's not
I've
only
never
history,
thought about the
but
Greek
also
myth in that
art
way,
history.
but that's true. Yes. Someone is asking for you to talk a little bit more about the interpreters and just explain how they were selected again, their nationalities, and was there any sort of confirmation process for their interpretations being accurate?
Yes and no. Many of them already had served as investigators in the US Army, or the British Army, or the Soviet Army, or the French Army. So when they, especially the Western allies, first put their step on European ground, they of course were also trying to gather informations about potential war crimes. And of course also for as long as the war would go on, potential targets. So they were constantly interviewing German soldiers. And so there were a lot of persons who had at least the ability to translate very, very quickly German into English, German into French, or on the other side of the continent, German into Russian. And also a lot of I mean, this is actually the only high qualified group that was sexually equally, or gender equally equipped with men and women. And a lot of the women, for example, also served in the army before, for example, translating documents and so on. And then they, of course, often had the wish to return to Europe. They left Europe, and then they came back as civilians or as members of the army. And then, yeah, as it turned out that there is a very, very big problem with consecutive interpreters. For our purpose here in Nuremberg, they were looking for people and they were recruiting them wherever they could. And then there is an attic. There is an attic above Courtroom 600, where now is our exhibition, and that was the training room for the interpreters.
Oh, interesting.
You had to make them familiar with the technical equipment as well as with the translation technique.
Sure, I think it's not something I have really thought of before in terms of this was brand new technology for them. So just even learning the mechanics of that would be something that they would have to do.
Yeah, and when you it's not only practitioners and scholars in the field of international criminal law who consider Nuremberg as their mecca. It's also the simultaneous interpreters. And actually a very important international association of them had founded in Nuremberg, I think in 1946 or 47.
Yeah, that makes sense given the strength of it. Yeah. Question about the presentation unit and where they made printed posters and name tags, and would they have been sort of at the ready somewhere? So if something Jackson or one of the teams needed a sketch or needed something, how would that have worked?
It was a very important contribution of the Office of Strategic Services. That was the military intelligence service of the US Army. And they had a very strange, for a military intelligence service, they had a very strange a branch called presentation branch. And they were exclusively occupied with producing visual aids, films, all stuff. And it was the architect, Dan Kiley, who invented Courtroom 600, you could say, was in that branch. And in that same branch, there were people who were preparing visual aids for the trial. And then as the OSS more and more shifted its focus to the Far East, the people were transferred to the Office of Chief of Counsel, the prosecution authority, and continued to work for them. The same with the filmmakers, Stuart and Bud Schulberg, who produced films of the trial and for the trial. They were then, I mean, a lot of them, of the OSS members were Navy members or Naval Reserve members, and then joined as the OSS was more and more suppressed, they then changed their attachment.
Gotcha. And we have a question as to why Nuremberg was chosen as the seat of this tribunal, and was there something particular about Courtroom 600 that suited it ideally? And so why Nuremberg and why this courtroom?
Yeah, as you can see, Courtroom 600 was not ideal. otherwise they wouldn't have
Dan wouldn't have had
efforts. Any work. But of course, Courtroom 600 was very big, and that was an advantage. But actually, the answer is quite simple and not so very romantic. It's infrastructure. I mean, when it came to the point where it was clear, okay, the four allies will conduct an international trial to try the major war criminals, the search began. And yeah, it was quite simple because the British would do everything that the Americans said, because they were more or less together. The French had no capacities, nothing, and the Soviets as well. So it were the Americans who, very, very quickly started to look for a possible place, and they said, okay, when we are preparing the place, we will of course pick a place in our zone of occupation. Okay, that's Bavaria, Hesse, and parts of Baden-Württemberg. So, okay. Nuremberg is very close to Berlin. It's very close to Munich, quite in the center. So a very a good connection via trains to the rest of the to the rest of the occupying territories. And we have a wonderful, gigantic judiciary building with a wonderful prison in the backyard, ideal to isolate the prisoners from each other. And so it was mere infrastructure that convinced them. And when Jackson came there, he was immediately convinced. There were other options, a casino in Bad Kissingen. This is something like 80 kilometers from here, or the Opera House in Munich. But he said, why take that when we have a judiciary building? And then later, of course, you can see that in the film, especially in the film, a dissemination of the trial, they were using, of course, all the symbolic potential that was there. You know, the city of the party rallies, the city of the Nuremberg laws, the racist Nuremberg laws that were banning Jews from the public life in Germany, and also using the symbolism that was in this court building. My interpretation is that, for example, this door with Adam and Eve is used as a marker for the different chapters. In Nuremberg, it's Lessons for Today, the film that the US military released in Germany in 1948 to bring to the German people the idea of the Nuremberg trial. And they use this door as a mark for each chapter. And my interpretation is to show, okay, you had a working judiciary system, you destroyed your judiciary system for 12 years, and now we are bringing justice and judiciary, proper judiciary back. So it was an ideal combination, yeah? First the infrastructure and then the symbol.
Axel, thank you so much for this wonderful tour of the courtroom today and historically. This was a fantastic way to start off this year-long series. I hope all of you will join us for the next program in this series, which is on December 1st, and that's with the British Institute of International and Comparative Law. You can register for that program either through Bickle's website, through the Jackson Center's website. Elizabeth has put the links in the chat as to where you can find the full list of the symposium series. Axel, thank you so much again for your time today and that wonderful tour.
Yeah, let me thank you for your kind invitation, and of course for the interest of your, what are they called? Visitors, viewers?
Audience.
I don't know. I'm too old for this technique.
Es war ausgezeichnet. Axel, danke sehr.
Have a nice day. For me, it's evening, and I think I'm having a beer. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.